You're listening to the Online DJ podcast, where today we're talking with Ben Stowe about DMX. Alright, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of the Online DJ podcast. Now today we're going to be talking all about DMX and some of the factors involved around it, such as things like can you use microphone cable for DMX lighting, or dip switches and how to understand them, or wireless lighting, all sorts of factors like that. So with me today I've got one of the geekiest guys in the industry, Ben Stowe. Now Ben Stowe has DVDs out talking all about event lighting and some really geeky aspects behind the technology side of the industry, and he also works for NFLX Pro over in North America. So Ben, firstly, tell us a little bit about your background and who you are.
Well, I think you said it. I'm a geeky guy. That's kind of who I am and what I do. I'm frequently called on in the industry to assist with national tours. Obviously, I do a lot of work with the DJ community. Assisting people with engineering questions and making gear selections, and of course in the United States and North America we're an equipment reseller. I do have a couple DVDs out. They are available in the UK. They are part of the Pro Academy series, and they're distributed in I think 19 countries. These include the Pro Academy series event lighting DVD and the Pro Academy series Geek Boot Camp. So if you want to be a geek like me, go pick up the boot camp. It's a good start.
So moving over to our topic of DMX, can you explain what DMX actually is?
DMX is quite simply a digital protocol. Actually, that's its first name, Digital Multiplex. And it's a digital protocol for controlling lighting. And one of the nice things about DMX is that it's standard. It's a universal standard. So DMX from one manufacturer's controller will work with another manufacturer's lights, and so on and so forth.
And Ben, why do you feel some DJs, especially mobile DJs, seem scared of DMX? Do you think it's more of a time factor, that they might not have time to set it up, or feel that they don't have time to set it up? What do you feel it is?
I think so, yeah. I think that's part of it. I think, there's a time thing there, but maybe DJs have seen some of the early DMX controllers, or they've used or seen some of the hardware controllers that are available. And I think that might scare me too. And obviously I'm not scared of DMX. I use it all the time and do some great things with it. I think we live in a different era now and have for some time, really. There's very inexpensive yet well-featured DMX software packages out there that give tremendous flexibility. They're tremendously easy to use. They give us some wonderful tools, and they do it in a way that's really easy for the average layman, I guess, to use. And of course, the power user is just going to get more out of it. So I don't think there's really any reason to fear DMX. To quote a famous quote, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, maybe.
And what benefits do you personally feel DMX and lighting control adds over, say, using sound to light or pre-manufactured shows built into units?
Well, the obvious benefit is control. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. You have the ability to create lighting that matches the audio, that matches the mood. And I think that's really the new battleground. I think particularly in terms of like uplighting and event lighting, anybody can take a light and point it up a wall. That requires only a basic, ambulatory set of motor skills. So I think that's the low-hanging fruit, and obviously you're going to see more and more competition for that. So where the high fruit is, where the money is at, is in the ability to control an atmosphere, to control a show. And I think it's the same thing if you go to a concert. If you go to look at a touring artist, obviously all of the lighting that's at that show has been programmed and choreographed to fit a specific mood, to fit a specific purpose within that show. And that's what DMX gives us. And now that it's so easy and affordable for the average DJ, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think it's not even the future. I think it's the present. Just expanding on that, as opposed to like the built-in shows, the pre-programmed standalone, shows that come in lights, they're great, in some applications. And my answer to every engineering question is it depends. Which is better? I guess it's going to depend on the moment. If you just need a light that's going nuts and doing its thing, well, probably the built-in program is fine. But here again, the beauty of DMX is control.
So Ben, if someone wanted to say go out, buy some DMX equipment to get started making shows, what's the simplest way they could go out and get started with DMX?
Well, for people just getting started out, the thing I hear over and over again is, I just want simple. And that usually leads them to an inexpensive hardware controller. And those are really the opposite of simple. I understand they're inexpensive. You can get one for, in the United States for $30. And it's going to be very limited. And if you want to do complex things with it, it's going to be very difficult, and you're really gonna hate life, Whereas software packages can do so much more, and they can do it so much easier. So really, I think simple is the software. It presents things to us in a very human way. It kind of does for us what software does these days. We're not looking at lines of code anymore. We're just clicking buttons, If you want to upload a picture of your cat to Facebook, and that's what the internet is for, all you have to do is point and click. And DMX software kind of does that for us, instead of having to understand the ones and zeros and the nuts and bolts of DMX.
So moving over to sort of address setting on DMX, with most newer lighting fixtures, we're getting sort of LED displays and things like that are making setting the DMX address much more simpler. But there are still some fixtures out there with what I call the dreaded dip switch. Now I know personally when I was starting to learn sort of the basics of DMX, dip switches used to confuse the heck out of me. So I think it confuses a lot of DJs starting out with dip switches, and it sort of puts them off before they even start programming. So how can we get a better grasp on the concept behind dip switches and better understand them?
Well, yeah, obviously there's lots of ways now we can address fixtures. We have 7-segment LED displays, we have LCD displays, we have organic LED displays. We have black box RDM devices that can be remotely addressed. And of course, as you say, the dreaded dip switch. I don't dread dip switches at all. A couple reasons. One, they're really actually very simple. I think a lot of people are tripped up by the fact that it's, a binary, type system, but the number of the dip switch is just a placeholder, and then each placeholder has a value, and that value doubles starting at 1. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth. So, we simply turn on the switches necessary to make a number that we need. And expanding on that, I can calculate just about any number on a dip switch I need to in my head, and certainly with a piece of paper I could figure it out quickly. But you don't have to. There's an app for that. Dip switches really aren't that scary. I've taught thousands and thousands of people in seminars how to use dip switches, and it's kind of fun, pardon the pun, to watch the lights go on, to see people go, I get it, this isn't so bad at all. A shameless plug, you could always pick up my DVD, and you could have me presenting in your living room anytime you want.
Loving the shameless plug there, Ben. But moving on to something that's fairly new in the industry, do you feel wireless DMX is going to be the way forward?
Well, I think wireless DMX has definitely come into its own. One of the really important things we got to keep in mind here, though, is that while DMX is a standard, wireless DMX is not. We're really adding a protocol here, and that's the method that we use to transport the DMX signal wirelessly. And there are a lot of wireless DMX protocols out there. There's American DJ's Wi-Fi, there's Chevet's D-Fi, there's an open source 2.4 gigahertz, there's Goddard Designs has one, and then there's WDMX. And I think WDMX is probably the closest thing we have to a standard, as it's really kind of emerged as the leader, certainly in terms of reliability. And one of the reasons is the wireless protocol that it uses, which is AFHSS, or Advanced Frequency Hopping Spread Spectrum. That means it's moving the signal all over the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, and it's less vulnerable to interference or dropouts. But as far as whether or not it's the way forward, it's certainly convenient. It sure is nice. I use it frequently, but at the same time, nothing beats copper. If you want rock solid reliability, copper is the way to go. And so many times, you'll see a hybrid between wireless and wired DMX used. It brings us back to, my favorite answer. It depends.
Now, my next question is one I'm sure you're going to love answering, and that is, what is the difference between a microphone cable and a DMX cable, and does it really matter which one we use for what?
Oh boy, yes. If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me if it was okay to use microphone cable for DMX or whatever, I guess I'd be a pretty wealthy guy. Simply put, they're two very different types of signals. As we discussed early on, DMX is a digital signal, and analog audio is just that. It's an analog signal. So fundamentally, we're designing these cables differently to transport different signals the best way possible. In what we want is for our signal to arrive exactly as we sent it, and that's simply impossible. So the name of the game here is just to alter the signal as little as possible. And each cable is engineered for a specific purpose. DMX being a digital signal, we're going to have a higher characteristic impedance. Typically, we find that around 110 or 120 ohms, but we want to have less capacitance. Whereas an analog microphone cable, you're going to find that around 70 ohms characteristic impedance, and maybe a little bit higher capacitance in the cable. And then the inductive values are different too. And typically with DMX cable, we also find a foil shield. And that helps protect us against those higher frequency interferences like RFI and whatnot. Now, here's the real kicker, though. 9 times out of 10, people tell me that they want to use a microphone cable instead of a DMX cable because a mic cable is cheaper. And in reality, that's simply not true. A quality microphone cable actually will cost more than a DMX cable because it's going to have larger conductors. It's going to be better built to be dragged around stages and walked on by musicians and that sort of thing. Whereas DMX cables typically live in a lighting truss, so they tend to be a little bit less robust than a microphone cable in that sense. So that doesn't really hold water. And people ask this too. They say, well, if a DMX cable is a better cable because of the additional shielding and whatnot, shouldn't I use that for everything? And of course, the answer, like we just talked about, is no. They're very different cables for different purposes. You should use a microphone cable for audio, and you should use a DMX cable for DMX. And besides, every time you use a microphone cable for DMX, a kitten dies somewhere.
And we definitely got to save those kittens, right? So, moving on to me giving you another shameless plug. In your Pro Academy event lighting DVD, you explored the psychology behind event lighting in terms of like that. So without giving too much away, could you briefly sort of explain what that segment was all about?
Well, thanks for the cheap plug. I appreciate it. Absolutely. We have to think about this in a context of a global world now. Really the whole world is becoming increasingly diverse with a variety of cultures, and not only does light have a sort of a universal impact on humans, we behave differently in the light than we do in the dark. But individually, of course, colors have different meanings within different cultures. And of course, the beauty of DMX is that we have control, but we should do this with a purpose. We should understand what we're trying to do. And so it was really interesting having the physiologist and the psychologist participate in our lighting DVD and talk about, what light makes people do, really. It was really kind of interesting.
So, Ben, if people want to find out more information about you, your DVDs, NFLX Pro, etc., where can they do this?
Well, I think what you want to know is going to dictate where you go to get that answer. If you're interested in the DVD, and I certainly hope you are, we worked hard on it, and I feel good about it even all these years later. It's distributed in the United Kingdom by Pro Mobile and Alfred Music. I know if you go to promobile.org.uk and you go to their bookstore, they've got it available there, and they've got it in stock. So that's probably where I would go. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to my blog, benstowe.com. I don't update it nearly as often as I should, but stop by and give it a read. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm there. I've got a lot of friends all over the world on there. And NFLX Pro is at nflxpro.com. And like I said, we're primarily serving North American market with that.
So, Ben, before we let you go, we ask all our guests to come on the Online DJ podcast what is their favourite song. So, what's yours?
You know, it's funny. My son just asked me the same question the other day. He said, "Dad, what's your favorite song?" And I said, "Well, it depends on the day." And he, without hesitation, said, "Tuesday." So I had no answer for that. You know what? I like a lot of different music. I think I'm like a lot of people. I enjoy music, and I enjoy quality musicians of a variety of genres. I do have a huge collection of Johnny Cash on my iPod, so I guess probably anything from him. But I'm all over the map. Kind of dig some of the stuff from Muse. Maybe a little alternative rock too. But I don't really have a favorite song. I couldn't even probably nail it down to a favorite style, to be honest.
So that was Ben Stowe from NFLX Pro over in America. I definitely encourage everyone to go check out his DVDs. They have some great content in them, especially the psychology area of things that we talked about. I found that particularly interesting myself. He also has some great technology content in those DVDs, so if you're into the technical side of things, definitely go check those out. Ben loves to be geeky, and that definitely comes across in his DVDs, so go check those out. I hope we've made a lot of those guys that are scared about DMX maybe, or a little bit confused or skeptical about it, a little more happier to maybe give it a go. I definitely think if you've got some power cans or something lying around, you should hook them up to a controller or hook them up to some sort of software and just see what you can do with them. I mean, if it works out, you can put some great shows and it can definitely add to your setups. So other than that, that's all we've got time for today. If you want to discuss anything about today's show, head over to our Twitter at OnlineDJHQ. You can also find us on Facebook, Online DJ, or you can head over to our website, www.onlinedj.co. You can also subscribe to this podcast on platforms such as iTunes, SoundCloud, etc. And all the links to that will be on our website. Other than that, see ya!